20 years,
Hello,
Sussex
and
Strategy
welcome back
Group has
to the
helped
Sussex
companies.
Strategy Group Ontario Election Show. I'm Joe Ragusa, your host. I'm a partner here and head of the Ontario Government Relations Group. As we mentioned to you in previous episodes, we'd like to bring you different people who bring different perspectives to what's going on in Ontario government, politics, and of course the upcoming election. We've had people from different parties before, different people from media. Today we're pleased and proud to be joined by Lorne Bozinoff, President of Forum Research. Welcome, Lorne.
Thank you.
Lorne, it's quite timely that you're here today. Your company released a bit of a bombshell poll this morning that gives some up-to-date numbers on what's on people's minds in this province with the election literally weeks away. I think that there were some people that were surprised this morning when they opened their phone or turned on their computer and saw the results. So it's great that you were able to join us. It's very timely, your appearance, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do that. So let's get into it.
Okay.
You've released a poll today. It's a fairly large sample, 1,126 respondents. And Lorne, you've found that Doug Ford and the PC party enjoys the support today of 46% of voters.
Yeah, so we've been polling all during the, I'll say, campaign, even though the risk's not been dropped. And we have the Tories at a pretty high position. They're at 46%. We actually have the New Democrats in second, excuse me, and we have the Liberals actually in third place in this poll. So a little bit of catch-up that the Liberals are going to have to do.
I'd say, yeah, quite a bit. So you've got the NDP at 27% support and the Liberals at 21% support. And when you do this then and you're polling across the province, different age groups, different income levels, so that it's a fair representation of the public.
Random sample, yeah.
Your release goes on to put out some seat projections as to how these percentages of popular vote would translate into actual seats. And I think some people are surprised by it.
So I think people are surprised that we have the Liberals with only 7 seats in the new House. We have a seat projection model where we can project the seats that each party is likely to get. I think in the last Ontario election we were out by 1 seat, something like that, in terms of the prediction. So if the polling data is accurate, then the seat projection information is going to be accurate. And the reason the Liberals are at just get the 7 seats is what we call how efficient is the vote. It really depends on how the vote, especially when you have 3 parties. You have a 3-party situation, then it's a little bit hard just looking at the numbers to know which party is going to get. The Democrat vote is concentrated in a number of seats, so that's why they get more seats than the Liberals. The Liberals vote is more spread out, but not enough to win many seats in each of those ridings.
So we have a number of ridings then where the Liberals are going to finish second but not win. And so their support is wide but not deep. Is that fair?
Exactly right.
Okay, so just for the benefit of our viewers, and I should say Lorne has done work for some of our clients before, and we have a good working relationship. For people that are new to polling, they look at NDP support at 27% and Liberal support at 21%, which is a 6-point spread, not insignificant. But then they might have trouble understanding how does the 27% translate to 23 seats and the 21 only 7. Now you touched on it earlier, but maybe tell us a little bit more about the geographic, the regional breaks of what you found.
So when you look at a map of Ontario, typically what you find is just looking at the whole geography of the province. If you looked at a map, it would be a sea of blue, and that would be the Tory support in the rural areas. Then you'd have a bunch of orange donuts, red donuts. That's a Liberal support in the urban areas, so Toronto, Ottawa, and so forth. And then in the center of the donut is the orange NDP, the downtown areas. And that's why the NDP, their vote is concentrated, but they'll get those seats because they have a good lead in those seats. So these are like the Toronto Danforth type ridings that the NDP typically win all the time. They're going to retain those seats.
Your results also indicate that in places like southwestern Ontario, there is considerable PC support, but I think, is it fair to say in this election we'll see more battlegrounds between the PCs and the NDP? Like there's parts of Ontario where the Liberals might not be competitive. I'm thinking of, say, the Niagara region or even the KW area. where we might even have NDP incumbents that are kind of trying to fend off this PC surge. So are we likely to see those kind of battles?
I think yes, especially in southwestern Ontario. People in the rural areas are pretty upset about still upset about the wind turbines. This is a long old policy now, but the turbines are still there. It makes it difficult for the Liberals to gain traction. So with the Liberals sort of on the downswing right now, it's an opportunity for the NDP to try and win some of those seats. But the Tories will be a strong opposition in those seats.
Okay. So in addition to party support, your poll also asked respondents about leaders. Do you approve, do you disapprove? And reading your findings here, it looks like Premier Wynn's approval number is about 18% and disapproval at 73%, which is quite high. Interestingly, Doug Ford's approval is 37%, but also 40% who say they disapprove of him, and he hasn't put out a platform yet. And Andrea Horwath seems to do a little bit better, 37% approval and disapproval of 32%. So is it safe to say that none of the three leaders have really caught the imagination of the public? It caught fire and are...
No, it's a sad commentary on Ontario politics. The three parties have leaders that no one is really thrilled about. So it is a bit disappointing, I think, that everyone has numbers. But just going back to the issue of Doug Ford's numbers, so he's been leader of the opposition for, I'll say, a few weeks, a month, whatever. But he has a high disapproval rating, that 40% disapproval that he has. And it's partly due to the fact that he's a polarizing figure. He's very well known in, of course, the 416, because he was a councillor, his brother was mayor and so forth. So he brings a lot of baggage with him to whatever position he's in this case, as leader of the opposition.
So as you know, all of the parties do their own polling, and presumably they have similar findings that that Forum has produced today. Is that an opportunity? Is that an opening for the Liberals and the NDP? I mean, we saw a couple of days ago the Premier making a direct comparison between Doug Ford and Donald Trump. Are they trying to capitalize on maybe his disapproval rating being a little higher than it might otherwise be?
Well, the Liberals, let's just look at the Liberal strategy. They had a great budget, and it was extremely popular, but there's no lift in their numbers. So when you did an individual analysis of each of the items, the free daycare and everything else, the free drugs for seniors and all that good stuff, all that was extremely popular. Some of those items were in the 70% range in terms of approval. Very, very popular budget, but no lift really, or not much lift for the Liberals, because of the barrier of the Premier's low approval ratings. So the Liberals have tried to come up with a great platform, and I'll say they have come up with a great platform in terms of being popular with the public, but no impact on their numbers. So I think now they've done, I think, all they can on the policy side. They've got to look at either trying to improve the Premier's approval ratings, which after 4 years is a little hard to do because of that history, or defining Doug Ford and trying to get his approval numbers down.
Fair enough. And if you're the NDP, if you're Andrea Horwath, then you obviously are going to attack the government because that's what opposition parties do.
Yeah.
But I think the NDP also has to anticipate some of those battles in local ridings where the contest is really between them and the PC. So should we expect Andrea Horwath to kind of come out firing at both? When she launched her platform, she said, Kathleen Wynne's a done deal. Now it's just a question of who the next premier is going to be. Do you want Ford or do you want me? What do you think about that?
Well, just looking at this strategically, about 40% of the province supports the Tories. That's the center-right candidate. And about 60% support the center-left, two parties. They are splitting that vote, just like the way, Rob Ford was able to split the left vote when he was elected mayor. So strategically, the progressives or the left or whatever have to really think about if they split the vote, is that going to result in Doug Ford becoming premier, which I think is like the worst thing that could happen to people on the left. So they have to think, I think, of which party is best able to really take on Doug Ford and not split the vote. We call this strategic voting. I'm not a big fan of it, generally speaking, but we may see it this time. To just address the issue that you've raised.
Well, we've seen it in the past, certainly, where the Liberals looked for the progressive voters to kind of coalesce around them, as being the party that is best equipped, best positioned, I guess, to prevent a right-of-center government from forming. But given these these low approval and popularity numbers, I'm not sure that that's going to work this time, but I certainly believe that they'll try. So now you've been running polls, and people have seen forum research results on an ongoing basis. So you've prepared a bit of a graphic for us, and Michael, maybe we can get that on the screen, and we can talk a little bit about what's been going on here since the beginning of the year. So I'd ask you to just take a moment. This is your work, and so it begins with the first poll of the year, and while there's some up and down, the blue line is consistently the highest. So maybe walk our viewers through what happened since January until now.
So we have this graph. It does have the provincial polling trend since the beginning of 2018. And what I like to think of it as really showing the logic of polling, because we have superimposed on the numbers of events that were going on just after we did the poll. And we do this so we can actually look at the effect of events on public opinion. So rather than doing the poll on the same day every month, it will vary depending on what's been going on, because we want to catch the latest impact on public opinion. So let's just have a look at the numbers. We had the Tories going into this year in the approximately 40% range, 40 or 42%. And that's important because to get a majority, you have to be approximately at 40 or 40, just above 40%. So it's critical. It's one thing to lose a point or two, and it will affect you in some way in terms of number of seats, but you go below 40, and you're likely to end up with a minority government, even if you're winning the election. So we started the election with, we started the year at 40% for the Tories. We then had Patrick Brown's resignation, which had almost no impact on Tory support. So it kind of indicated that people didn't really care who the Tory leader was. They were going to vote Tory no matter who the leader was, and that Patrick Brown wasn't per se much of a draw for the party. The next poll we did was in February at the height of the Tory leadership campaign. That was sort of the peak for the Tories. They got up to about 49% of the vote, very, very high. That's a supermajority, and that's a reflection of the profile of the candidates who are running, and the candidates who ran were very popular. So we had Doug Ford, well known, we had Christine Elliott, well known, well liked, and so forth, and Caroline Mulroney. It was a good race, didn't get too nasty, and it gave the Tories quite a boost and depressed the votes of the other two parties. That was sort of the high point. Then, of course, we had the strange ending to the leadership race, that convention in March. Ford wins, and we did see a decline in their numbers, in the Tory numbers. So this is some people who were hoping that Christine Elliott would be the leader, or maybe Caroline Mulroney would be leader, being a bit disappointed. Tory vote went down with Doug Ford. Plus also a reflection of some baggage that Doug Ford probably brings to things from his previous career as a councillor in the City of Toronto. Then in further on in March, we had the Liberal budget. You can see the bounce, the lift for the red Liberal numbers. We had them before that in third place behind the NDP. This pushed them ahead of the NDP. It narrowed the gap to the narrowest gap we've seen, I would say, in 3 years between the Tories and the Liberals.
So there was a bit of a budget bounce for the Liberals.
I think a good bounce. Yeah. I think that's a pretty good bounce. So the key thing for the Liberals was to continue that trend. Of course, then we had the Livingston verdict and going to jail and all that, and we also had the NDP platform come out, and the impact on the Liberals in terms of their decline.
Okay, now I'm just curious on the Livingston verdict coincided with because it was very recent with that period of time, but does need to ask you, is this something that people are raising as you're conducting your research, as I'm not voting Liberal because of that, or do you believe that the timing of that dip coincides with that verdict?
Well, we don't know for sure, but we know that the poll was done after the verdict, so it has to factor into it somehow. And unless something else is going on, that's the most likely, I'll say, culprit in terms of the Liberal dip.
Okay, fair enough. So you did this poll in a week when lots happened, including the release of the NDP platform. And for those of you watching, we will be talking to Catherine Fife, NDP MPP, after Lorne about that. So you were in the field while this was going on, and some of the key themes that were included in that NDP platform, you did some work on that too to see how people reacted to it. So most notably, high-income earners, new personal income tax, converting student loans to grants, charging people an extra 3% sales tax on any vehicle worth over $90,000, and childcare, which is either free or $12 a day per child, depending on people's income levels. And what did you find? How are people receiving those messages?
Also fairly popular. So tax on the wealthy, because that's of course a tax on the minority, tends to be, those type of taxes tend to be very popular among the public because they're a tax on somebody else. So they had a 50% approval rating, that's pretty good, 34% disapprove. The student loan forgiving, 47%, again a fairly high number, 38% disapprove. The vehicle surcharge also, you know, there's not a lot of people buying cars in that price range, so a tax on that is also fairly popular at 43%. And then finally, the child care, the free or $12 a day child care, 41% approval, 38% disapproval. But when you look at those numbers, so the approval numbers are all higher than the disapproval, but the approval numbers are shared among both the Liberal and the New Democrat supporters. But people who tend to vote for those two parties will like that. The disapproval is centered around the Tories. So sort of Doug Ford gets the benefit of the disapproval, but the approval has to be split between Andrew Horwath, I think, and also the Liberals.
Right, and we've seen without so the PC party has not launched its platform yet, but we've certainly seen Doug Ford talk about things like a 1% decrease in the corporate income tax rate, where we have the NDP saying they'll actually increase taxes on corporations and on individuals earning over $220,000 a year. So there seems, and I don't think the Liberals, well, they haven't released their platform either, but in their last budget, I don't believe that they increased either personal income taxes and recently lowered the corporate income tax for small business as a bit of a trade-off for the minimum wage increases. So you're finding then that for those people that disapprove of tax increases, generally it benefits Ford and the PCs, even though the Liberals haven't said that they would increase taxes. So not a lot of good news in that either for the Ontario Liberal Party. So Lorne, in the time we have left, we hear often that campaigns matter, elections matter. Having been in this business for a long time, what do you anticipate, these red, orange, and blue lines, what do you figure that we're going to see during, and I'll ask you to look in your crystal ball just for a little bit and see, is this a trend? Obviously this trend has been in place for a while. Do you believe it's likely to change over the course of a 4-week writ period?
Well, let's look at each party separately. So for the Tories, Doug Ford's not been around too much. That's because I think he's running a front-runner campaign. He's probably looking at his own polling numbers that are very similar to these numbers. And they're thinking, you know, things are going our way. We're heading towards a majority. Let's just keep a low profile. Let's not step in it. And I think that's what he's done. He hasn't been around, especially in the 416 too much. I think he's been in the rest of the province. So that's likely to continue. There's been no grand platform because I don't think they want it out there as a target for the other parties to go after. And since they're also so far ahead, you know, why jinx things with coming with a platform where there might be a misstep? The New Democrats, I think, are really there sort of catch the fumble if the Liberals fumble it on the left. The NDP are there. They're also looking at the numbers. They're seeing the Liberals are in difficulty right now. I think they are hoping that they want to be the consolidated party on the left to take Doug Ford down. The Liberals have a bunch of challenges. that they control the government. They control the government now. They can research policy, develop policy, and use the full resources of the government. And they did that, and they came up with a lot of popular policies with respect to the budget, but their numbers didn't move. So they have to deal with the fact that the Premier's ratings are low, and I think what they're going to try and do is compensate by trying to lower Doug Ford's approval ratings.
Fair enough. Okay, and you're not contracted to do polling for any of the three parties?
No, not at all.
And so Forum is available for any organization that wants to conduct some of its own research before the writ or during the writ?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's great. Lorne, thank you so much for this time. It's informative. It's very timely. This poll came out, I think, at 8 o'clock this morning. So we do appreciate you coming and giving a bit more insight. You know, sometimes when these polls come out, there's graphs and numbers and lines, and it's not always easy for people to look at it and try to make sense of it. So thank you for coming in and providing additional context to it. I'm sure that in the Queen's Park precinct, your poll will be the most discussed item today. Absolutely. And we look forward to the next one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, so stay with us. We're going to take a little break now, and then after our break, we're going to show you an interview that I conducted with Catherine Fife, NDP MPP from Kitchener-Waterloo, shortly after the release of the NDP platform. So she'll be sharing her thoughts on that with you. So stay with us.
For 20 years, Sussex Strategy Group has helped companies and organizations navigate government and bring about successful policy change. Our team of experts understand that it takes more than meetings and phone calls to turn heads and change opinion. It takes insight, strategy, and deep domain knowledge to get things done. In a world that's constantly changing, one thing stays the same. Sussex Strategy Group helps you win. Visit sussex-strategy.com right now and let us help you today. Sussex Strategy Group, 20 years of getting you results.
Looking to take your digital advocacy to the next level? Get in touch with our team at Sussex Adrenaline. Sussex Adrenaline is Canada's most awarded digital public affairs agency. Using our proprietary advocacy platform, Vox, supporters of our clients' campaigns have sent over 1 million letters to their local politicians advocating for change. Let us help you design your next advocacy campaign and get the results you need to win. Sussex Adrenaline, digital that actually gets you results.
Okay, welcome back to our Ontario election show. I have the pleasure right now of being joined by Catherine Fife, NDP MPP, elected from the riding of Kitchener-Waterloo. Catherine, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for taking time out of your really busy schedule. Your party's had a busy week. You're in pre-election time, and
Absolutely,
so we really appreciate you coming down.
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Talking to us. Great. So Catherine was first elected in a by-election in 2012 and then re-elected in 2014 from Kitchener-Waterloo, but I understand your riding now will change a little bit with redistribution.
That's right. Going forward, the riding's going to be called Waterloo. I still have a small part of Kitchener, but for the most part, with redistribution, I lose a little bit of my Kitchener, my blue-collar folks.
Okay. Well, I mean, to give you a sense of how valuable Catherine's time is, she's actually the NDP critic right now for 4 different portfolios, being economic development and growth, research and innovation. Help me out with the other two.
Early learning and care, and the LGBTQ plus critic portfolio.
So there's time, you know, on the GO train between Kitchener and Toronto to read up on 4 different briefs, I guess, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I take the GO train if I don't have an early morning meeting, but we still have 4 slow trains from KW, okay. And so I'm still working on Regional Express Rail. It's an economic driver for sure, and our community is very, very active in trying to get the government to actually honor their original commitment to have express rail. And 2 hours and 37 minutes was the last time I took the train in, and that's a lot of time on a train, and it does affect productivity, and so. This, I think, connectivity is an economic driver, and I think it's going to be a major election issue.
All right, well, let's get into it. So this week, the NDP put out its long-awaited election platform. It's 97 or 98 pages. It was launched at an event with party leader Andrea Horwath. Many of you, I think, or all of you, were in the background there with a number of candidates as well.
It was well supported, yeah.
So it was a big event, and let's just touch on some of the main kind of high-level themes in the time that we have. So your commitment to pharmacare, which your party had articulated previously,
For sure.
about a year ago, I think, just prior to the 2017 budget, for all ages, all people, regardless of income, but for 125 drugs.
That's right. And the 125 drugs cover 91% of the most used drugs in the current slate of prescriptions that are available. And the age factor actually really does matter, because when you look at the impact and the return on investment for actually bringing in a pharmacare strategy, the blood pressure, the diabetes, the cholesterol, heart disease, these are some of the key issues that actually end up being chronic diseases. And so there's a long-term cost to our healthcare system, because 1 in 4 Ontarians doesn't have a plan, doesn't have access to the prescriptions. So they actually have half of the equation. They go to the doctor says, you know, you have this serious health issue, you need this medication, and they're cutting their pills in half, or they're not accessing those medications. So we see this, the healthcare budget is massive. We have an aging demographic in the province of Ontario, and so we looked strategically at how we could impact the healthcare budget in a positive way, making the lives of Ontarians better.
Sure.
And then also be upstream a little bit, instead of just catching and reacting to what is some chronic diseases that are affecting the healthcare budget.
Okay, and so the NDP also put out in their platform dental care, which is not new. You had articulated this before, including, I think I saw opening 70 dental clinics in public health units.
Absolutely. I mean, because if you're going to create a strategy where people have more access to dental care, then you have to address the need, the availability of those services. And so we do have some rural and northern communities that don't have the availability for dental care. And so our dental care plan would address the 1 in 3 people who don't have access to dental care and dental coverage. And Ontario is actually quite unique in this, in that when you look at the overall health of an individual, for some reason, oral care was not considered to be health care. And if you've ever, experienced that kind of pain, or that sort of chronic illness with your mouth and with your teeth, it impacts your ability to get work, it impacts your ability to work. And right now, the overall healthcare budget is 38 million of people going to emergency rooms just to deal with the pain. So there has to be a better way, and the Ontario Dental Association and dentists across the province, I think, recognize that it's time for Ontario to address dental issues.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we full disclosure, we do some work for the ODA, and they have some certainly lots to say that I'm sure they've shared with you and Frangelina and your leader. So in the platform, there's funding enhancements for hospitals, for long-term care, for home care. Mental health, I thought, was interesting. Mental health seems to have caught fire lately, and I think your party's actually proposing a separate, distinct ministry for mental health.
So right now in the province of Ontario, 11 ministries have a component of mental health, and so that's 11 ministries that have a whole layer of bureaucracy, and that impacts our ability to fund frontline services. This actually was a recommendation from an all-party committee back from 2010. And this is another one of those committees and select committees that the Liberal government never took action on. But they went through the process of consulting and doing the research and gathering the evidence, but didn't act on. And so we see this one mental health ministry as a way to really focus attention and be proactive, early intervention as a focus as well. And really a better use of funds. Mental health is 1 in 5 Ontarians actually have personal experiences with mental health, be it our children or family members or co-workers, and it's time for this.
Okay. So we saw that the NDP included as well for those people who have student loans, that those loans would be converted, essentially forgiven, and converted to grants to make post-secondary education more affordable, and won't have people graduating after 4 years with mountains of debt. So just around the office here, as the platform came out and we were going through it and reading it, it was So that some of the, at least thematically, some of the big ticket items do have something in common with the provincial budget that we saw at the end of March. There are enhancements to hospital funding, there's pharmacare initiatives. The details are different, who's covered and for what and for how much, and how much money is allocated to each. Childcare was one where the government has signaled big expenditures in childcare. I think your party has come out and said for people or households, I guess, earning up to $40,000 a year, childcare would be free. And if people that earn, I guess in the next level, I didn't see what the next level is.
It means tested to up to $12.
$12 per day per child.
That's right. And one of the reasons that we really focused on childcare, so you're quite right, pharmacare and dental care and access to quality, affordable childcare are really the anchors, I think, of our platform. But the childcare piece has been a long time coming, and obviously 28% of the women in the province of Ontario identified that they only work part-time because they only can access part-time childcare. So there is really a lost opportunity from an economic development perspective, from a gender equality and economic equality perspective. And so we are being very ambitious. I mean, we want to create 200,000 new childcare spaces in Ontario. The Liberal government has been talking about this for 15 years. And so you referenced that the budget that they came out the budget that they came out with about 3 weeks ago, it's had everything, as my mother says, it used to be a chicken in every pod. This one has a unicorn in every backyard. It's like this realization that all of a sudden this Liberal government recognizes that people are hurting, and they're asking people to believe them. And quite honestly, that's a huge credibility issue. And so just in question period today, the Liberals were coming in for the hug. We reject that hug entirely because we don't feel that the budget that they've tabled is a credible budget. We don't think that they've earned the trust of the people of this province, and we will not be supporting it. We have our own plan, and that's why it was so important for us to come out with our platform, to give the people of this province a clear direction as to what an NDP government would look like, what our priorities are, because those priorities reflect the people of this province.
And certainly in the publicly released polling that we've seen, affordability is a top-of-mind issue for people right now, and all the parties do polling and presumably come back with similar results. So it's not surprising then that your party and the Liberal Party are trying to attack those areas where they can. I mean, I don't think the provincial government can do much about the price of oranges that come from California.
No, but the provincial government can do a lot about the cost of hydro. I mean,
sure.
And obviously, I mean, we have seen the high cost of hydro, which is directly related to policies that this Liberal government created. With the privatization of the Green Energy Act, the Auditor General in 2016 came out with a report stating that Ontario had overpaid by $37 billion. So, I mean, that's a direct result of this Liberal government not doing their basic due diligence on energy policy. They went on to sell off, of course, Hydro One.
Your party says you'll buy it back now.
Yeah, so our plan is to bring back Hydro One because we believe hydro is a public service. We believe that the revenue that was generated by Hydro One when it was public was important to the infrastructure, the social infrastructure of the province. And we have a plan to reinvest all dividends, which is about $300 million, $320 million every year back into regaining control of our public utility. Kathleen Wynne had no business selling it. She had no mandate to do so. And it will, in the long run, be very costly to future generations. It's just fiscally irresponsible.
So given that they raised $9 billion when they sold, I think, 60% of it, your plan requires it's over time. You're not going to go out into the market.
Well, it's the damage is done. Like, let's be very clear. And so, and that $9 billion was really interesting. I mean, a majority of it was really just to create this illusion that they had balanced the budget, or as the finance minister slayed the deficit. But we're right back where we started from, and that's what the Financial Accountability Officer has stated. And he's an independent officer of the legislature. The Auditor General has called into question the finances and the accounting reporting measures that this government has taken into account. And so The where we are right now in the province of Ontario, and I feel it at the doors actually, is that people are genuinely concerned about where we are going. And so it was really important for us to put out a plan that would address those affordability issues that people face. And those hydro bills, that's a very tangible issue, and it's very different from the 2014 election when, we were talking gas plants. We're talking $1 billion in gas plants, or Orange, or eHealth. Those were large, large numbers, but what people understand each and every day is that when they look at their hydro bill, they see that they're trying to conserve, and they see that that's not making a difference. And so, the dynamic of this election, I would argue, is going to be very different than the 2014. And if 80% of the people in this province want change, we want to give them an option for that change.
It looks like at a high level that the NDP and the Liberals are going after the same the same policy areas, certainly the same themes, albeit with different implementation levels and numbers. Is the NDP strategy that, there seems to be an issue of voter fatigue. They want change, the 15 years of Liberal, even though this Premier's been the Premier for, I think, 5, that, is your party then saying to people, if you like all of that stuff that they're talking about, but you're sick of them, vote for us, and you get the same stuff?
It's actually, I think it's more than strategy, and it really is, us coming to the table with a plan that is actionable. And I will tell you that people are not believing what Kathleen Wynne is saying. They don't. So it's not really a question of us trying to beat them at some sort of game. We've gone to the people. We've said, what are your priorities? We've looked at the projections for the long-term budget in the province of Ontario. We're looking at strategically trying to invest to make a difference, also on the revenue side around job creation. And so this is a fully costed out platform. I'm pretty sure Doug Ford will not be doing the same. He's indicated that it's not exactly necessary. And the Liberals have not released their full platform yet. So I'll be taking this to the door this weekend. I'll be having honest and straightforward conversations with the people of Waterloo.
Good.
And they are going to see their priorities reflected in this platform, and that's been a long time coming.
So a little bit of maybe inside baseball. People want their hospitals built. People want their infrastructure built. And there's always a mindfulness of cost. So we've done a fair bit of infrastructure work over the years, and I think that with the Infrastructure Ontario regime now, it's actually, I think they've actually won awards globally for how they've administered these programs. Now, the NDP platform talks about 10 years and $180 billion, which is good. I mean, certainly I think we should never stop spending on infrastructure, because then some future government has to inevitably catch up, as we've seen with subways in this city. But your party's indicating there'll be no more P3s, or what Infrastructure Ontario calls AFPs, alternative finance and procurement projects. So to us, the benefit has been explained to us as the following: that historically, some of us have been around this stuff a long time.
Sure.
Government would put out a tender, companies would bid on it, projects were inevitably late, they would come in over budget, not on time, and governments were kind of on the hook to pay because you can't leave something 3/4 done. When they brought in this model, there was a significant amount of risk transfer, where the private sector, working together with hospital, say, administration, board of directors, and the province, they are called upon to design, build, finance, and maintain the project. So they bring the money, and it's contractual that, if that thing's
at very high interest rates, they do.
I mean, it's done largely on debt, not on equity. That is true. But if the project's due September 30th, it's due September 30th, and if it's late or goes over budget, the penalties are borne by the private sector, not the government. So there's a certain discipline built in. Why do away with that and go back to the traditional government as funder model that's proposed here?
So I mean, I think I'd go back to the Auditor General's report from 2015, where she identified that in the course of, through Infrastructure Ontario and through a number of projects that she tracked and she looked through the finances of, that she determined that the government had overspent by $8 billion. And when government is in a unique position to borrow money at very low interest rates, although I think that we all know that there is a spike that is predicted to happen. And the idea of risk transfer is really, ultimately the citizens of the province still have the risk. They still own the risk at the end of it. And not all public-private partnerships actually do come in on time and on budget. I mean, if you're looking at what's happening right now in Waterloo, I mean, we have an agreement with an operator to actually maintain and operate the LRT, and we don't have trains to. We don't have the other equation of that, and so. Things go wrong in large infrastructure projects all the time. We will be looking at, I mean, obviously Infrastructure Ontario is a long-standing agency, and it was created as an arm's length agency of the government so that they can sort of absolve themselves of the responsibility of infrastructure development, whether it's on time or whether it's above cost. Quite honestly, ultimately the government owns that responsibility, and so we fundamentally see that very different.
Okay, fair enough. Just going forward then, commitment to build 65,000 affordable housing units, that's great. Keep the cap and trade carbon regime in place. So that's one point where you're very different than the PC party.
Very different, yes.
Keeping the Jobs and Prosperity Fund in place, which is great, and I was intrigued by
We're going to repurpose some of that funding though, towards apprenticeship, like to the apprenticeship programs, though, right? And
which is great, but also a stream to be created on manufacturing research and development, which is great. I mean, being from Kitchener-Waterloo, you know all about that.
Absolutely, advanced manufacturing. I think that we haven't reached our potential, and certainly that's what I've been told from the various businesses from the Chamber of Commerce in Waterloo region. And there is much to be done. I mean, we have an amazing organization, Catalyst 137 in Kitchener-Waterloo. It's almost 400,000 square feet of manufacturing, design and tool. Like, we're making things again in Kitchener-Waterloo, and I think that that's really exciting, instead of giving other jurisdictions that business and those jobs.
So I want to come back to your region just towards the end of this program, but so going through the fiscal plan, your platform has significant investments and spending initiatives within it. The bottom line indicates a smaller deficit than what the Liberal government has put forward in this last budget, but you do have some personal income tax increases. I think it's 1% on if somebody's earning $220,000, it's 1% on the whole amount, and once somebody hits $300,000, it's an extra 2% on their marginal tax rate. So some of the people who watch this program fit into that category, and I think this is the question that they would ask you, because within your document it says we're going to ask people who are high income earners to pay their fair share.
That's right.
I think that's the word. And these guys are saying, well, one individual in particular said to me, I already pay 53.3% of my income, federally and provincially, in income tax, so more than half. What's fair share? At what point do we say, okay, that's fair now?
Well, listen, I mean, we, from a corporate perspective, we have a very low corporate tax. The personal taxes will be comparable to other jurisdictions, quite honestly. And we're addressing some affordability issues in other areas, like the child care, and like if you're a small businessman and you want to have a dental care program for your employees. So we're coming to the table in partnership with something like that. And I mean, for us, this is something that we've talked about, and we want to be very clear and open with everyone about where we are with those taxation rates, and that's why it's in our platform. And asking those folks to pay their fair share. I mean, they obviously are going to have some issues with what is fair and what is not, but from our perspective, the lower and middle class incomes, they cannot afford to take any more hits. And so this is part of our broader affordability issues.
And to your party's credit, page 94, page 95, all of the revenue measures are laid out. Actually, that's the spending side. 95 and 96, I think, are the revenue measures, but it's all there. It's online at OntarioNDP.ca if you're curious to know what the party intends to spend money on and how we'll raise that money. It is laid out and pretty transparent. And a little bit of time we have left. You're from the Kitchener-Waterloo region, which, you know, for those of us in other parts of Ontario, including downtown Toronto, you know, we view that as a real success story. That's a region where it's working. We have post-secondary institutions, we have small businesses, large businesses coming together, really competing in the new economy. You're an opposition member, so I guess you would see both sides of this, what's working well and what needs improvement. Talk to us a little bit about what you see in your region as needing improvement for the people that live there.
So I would go back to the connectivity piece. I think that this is one of the major issues that I do hear about. We have large companies like Google and Desire to Learn. Communitech is an ecosystem which is really focused on skill retention and drawing skilled talent to the region. We like to call ourselves the Silicon Valley of the North. And we really do feel that having a stronger connection with Toronto, which is reliable, but right now there's no train that leaves from Toronto in the morning to go to Waterloo Region. So there's almost 25,000 people that commute into Waterloo Region. We want to get those people off the 401. We want to give them a fast, efficient, and you know, reliable source of transit to get into the region. And then also, it has been promised so many times that we would have all-day two-way go, and right now we just have four, as I mentioned, 4 slow trains. Long-term, I think that high-speed rail option, if there's an environmental assessment currently on the go, it's supposed to be a 2-year process. If it is viable and we can bring people into the region and connectivity with the airport as well, the investment will come into that region, and we have the universities. Our engineers are renowned across the continent and across the nation, and that's what they're asking for. They're asking for reliable infrastructure planning. That, you know, it's not going to be a ribbon cutting every 4 years. It's actually going to be reliable timelines and budgetary expenditures, and that's why I put forward a motion asking this government, because even the regional express for the relief line or the freight express line, it's not in their current long-term infrastructure plan. So I think there's many ways to improve the way we plan and deliver infrastructure, and so perhaps I'll come back and we can talk more about that in the future. But that connectivity to Toronto, the Toronto Region Board of Trade is looking at housing, transit, energy costs. Those are things that we can do something about.
Do you believe the high-speed rail project will get off the ground at some point?
I'm looking forward to that environmental assessment. There are 22 reports on high-speed rail, so we're very good at studying it. The Rick Mercer report did something on that as well. But do I think that we can't continue to have people sit on the highway for 3 or 4 hours one way? There's a cost, there's an environmental, there's a healthcare, there's a quality of life cost, and there's a productivity cost. And if we're looking to reach our potential, reliable transit options have to be a priority for any government going forward. And one final thing, though, on that is that whoever does win this election, they will be inheriting some kind of mess. And until we can get in there and have a full audit of actually what is going on, I think that there are some outstanding questions that this government will leave us as to the validity of the numbers that exist right now.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about politics. Your region, Kitchener-Waterloo, in the 2014 election, elected yourself, at least one progressive conservative, and at least one liberal. So it's one of the few parts of the province where there's these three-way, at least opportunities for the parties.
No, it's true.
Do you expect that again in 2018, the upcoming election?
So I think that, I feel like this is going to be an election about emotion. I mean, I think, I'm very proud of the platform we put forward, but, there's a very strong sense of anger out there. And people in this province are going to be, 80% of them said they want change. And so, the work before us is to give them an option for that change. But the sentiment is strong and the anger is real. And I don't think that, I know that Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals are not going to be able to talk their way out of, or have a conversation out of this situation. So on the doors, what I hear is that people want a strong champion for the values that they see, and those values are, of course, reflected in this platform. And they have a genuine distrust of Doug Ford. Doug Ford does not resonate in the same degree evenly across the province of Ontario. And so I would tell you quite honestly is that my goal is to give a plan and then demonstrate, the 6 years that I've served. And if I'm fortunate enough to get elected again, and if Andrea Horwath is the Premier, I would welcome the opportunity to put these ideas into action.
Well, and at your launch yesterday, certainly your leader did I think a pretty good job of evening it out. There's going to be, I think, parts of the province where the political battle, the electoral battle, is going to be between your party and the PCs. There are parts of the province where the Liberals aren't going to play. She actually dedicated a fair bit of time to going after Doug Ford and the PC party, as almost as much as she did going after Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals. Does your party need to fight that kind of two-pronged battle in order to help out your candidates where the main opponent is the PC?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will be some there will be regional differences. I mean, the North is its own world in some respect. In southwestern Ontario, we have some momentum in southwestern Ontario. Really, I mean, there's more seats this time too, right? And so Toronto, I think Toronto is going to be a very interesting place to watch how the ridings swing back and forth. I have to tell you honestly, like we've been able to attract some pretty strong, credible, hardworking candidates. And it is true, though, is that campaigns still matter. And this is going to be a very interesting election. And I think I would agree with Jamie Watt, is that I think that it's going to be a fairly negative, because there's only one. The Liberals have only one play in their playbook right now, and that's to attack. And so we're saying to people, you don't have to choose between the Liberals and the Conservatives. We know what they deliver, and this time there's going to be a change for the better.
So we could have called this platform the third way, but I think it's been done before.
I don't want to comment on that, but I think it's changed for the better, and I'm proud of it. Yeah.
Catherine, thank you very much for your time here. We do
pleasure,
appreciate Catherine Fife of the NDP. Good luck in your re-election bid, and thanks for sharing this valuable insight with us and our viewers.
Thank you.
We hope to have you back sometime.
I would love to come back. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.